The little girl burst into Dahlia Brooks's flower shop wearing one white satin shoe and one bare foot. Blue orchids trembled in her arms. Her flower girl dress was streaked with dust, and a torn bracelet hung from her fist. "Please," she gasped, ducking behind the counter. "Don't call the man in the gray tie." Dahlia had just reached for the telephone when a black sedan stopped outside. A broad man in a gray tie stepped onto the sidewalk. Before he crossed the doorway, he called, "Did she show you the bracelet?" Dahlia looked down. The bracelet was hidden beneath the orchids. No one outside could have seen it. The girl's fingers closed around Dahlia's sleeve. "That's him," she whispered. "He said he'd bring me back after Daddy canceled the wedding." 3 hours earlier, the Belladonna Hotel had looked less like a wedding venue than a promise no one quite trusted. White roses climbed the marble columns. Blue orchids marked the aisle, where Antonio Moretti would marry Celeste Romano, ending a feud that had divided their families for 12 bitter, costly years. Dahlia had designed every arrangement, yet the coordinator kept calling her the flower lady. Mia Moretti was different. The 9-year-old had watched Dahlia braid copper wire beneath 7 ceremonial wrist corsages and asked her name twice so she would remember it. "Every knot is a signature," Dahlia explained. Mia studied the blue orchid seriously. Then she glanced toward the guards and lowered her voice. "Someone keeps moving them." Dahlia assumed she meant the flowers. Before she could ask, Marcus Vale, Antonio's security chief, appeared behind Mia. He rested a hand near the child's shoulder and smiled without warmth. "Your father is waiting, little sparrow." Mia went with him, but she looked back at Dahlia until the elevator doors closed. Now Marcus stood inside the flower shop. He told Dahlia that Mia had slipped away during a security drill. His voice was calm. For a moment, Dahlia wanted to believe him. The Belladonna contract could keep her shop open for a year. Refusing the hotel's security chief could destroy that chance. She reached for Mia's hand. The child recoiled so sharply that a vase toppled. Dahlia caught it against her hip. Shame followed immediately. She had nearly delivered Mia to the man she feared. "Her father can collect her," Dahlia said. "Or the bride. No one else." Marcus's expression tightened, then smoothed. While he telephoned Antonio, Dahlia examined the torn bracelet beneath the work lamp. It resembled the 7 wrist corsages she had made. A blue orchid, ivory silk, a copper frame, and a tiny Romano crest. But the knot turned left instead of right. Beneath the ivory ribbon lay a strip of black cloth. The stem had been cut with blunt household shears, not Dahlia's clean floral blades. "This isn't mine," she said. Marcus glanced over. "It carries your flower. Someone copied my work." Mia finally spoke. "I pulled it from his hand." "Whose hand?" Marcus asked too quickly. Mia pressed herself against the shelves. Dahlia turned the bracelet over. A curl of copper wire bore the faint green wax used to seal her delivery crates. The materials had come from her order, but the bracelet had not come from her hands. Someone had built false evidence from scraps and expected Antonio Moretti to believe it was entirely real. Antonio arrived 8 minutes later with Celeste. He filled the shop without raising his voice. His first glance found Mia's bare foot, her dusty dress, and the red mark left by the bracelet across her palm. He crossed the room alone. Mia ran to him. She let him lift her, but when Marcus stepped closer, she buried her face against her father's neck. Antonio noticed. Dahlia explained what Marcus had known before entering and showed him the reversed knot, the black backing, and the wax on the wire. Marcus responded with facts. The West Service Gate had remained open for 17 minutes. Tomas Reed had been assigned there. A Romano assistant had entered the flower room that morning. The false bracelet carried the Romano crest. "Someone wanted the child found with it," Dahlia said. "Or someone from the Romano party used it to reach her," Marcus replied. Celeste went pale, but she did not defend her family. She knelt several feet from Mia and asked, "Are you hurt?" Mia shook her head. She would not look at Marcus. Antonio asked everyone except Dahlia and Celeste to wait outside. Marcus hesitated. It was the first time Dahlia saw disobedience pass across his face. "She may have heard something relevant to security," he said. "Then she can tell me without security standing over her," Antonio answered. When the door closed, Mia loosened her arms around her father's neck. She looked toward the gray silhouette visible through the frosted glass and whispered, "The person who opened the gate is still inside your house." Antonio set Mia on a padded chair in Dahlia's back room and wrapped a clean towel around her bare foot. He asked why she had left the hotel. His questions came clipped and precise, the way he questioned adults who worked for him. Each one made Mia smaller. Dahlia almost stayed silent. Correcting Antonio Moretti could cost her more than the wedding contract. Then she remembered Mia flinching when Dahlia had reached for her hand. "Ask what she was trying to protect," Dahlia said. Antonio's eyes hardened, but he changed the question. Mia opened her fist. "I heard a man say, 'Once the girl is outside, leave the bracelet. He'll cancel the wedding himself.' Another man said 15 minutes was enough. They were going to find me before Daddy got scared." She had tried to reach the ballroom, but Marcus was standing between the service hall and the main stairs, so Mia followed a catering cart through the open west gate. She remembered the blue flower painted on Dahlia's delivery van and knew the market was nearby. "Why Dahlia?" Antonio asked. "She asked my name," Mia said. "Everyone else already knew who I belonged to." Antonio looked as if the sentence had struck him. Dahlia saw Mia watching, wondering whether honesty angered him. Antonio softened his question and waited. Mia wiped her cheek angrily. "I didn't run away from Daddy. I ran to find someone who wasn't afraid of his guards." Outside, a car door closed. Marcus was still waiting. If you believe every frightened child deserves to be heard, subscribe and stay with Mia's story. Under a brighter lamp, Dahlia separated the bracelet's silk layers. A black thread caught beneath her nail. Antonio recognized it. Every senior belladonna guard wore that reinforced fabric inside his tie. Marcus wore gray over black. The clue proved nothing by itself. Stolen cloth could frame a guard as easily as a Romano crest could frame Celeste. Still, Antonio kept the bracelet. He no longer trusted Marcus to hold it or examine it privately. The wedding guests remained inside the belladonna, while Antonio quietly ordered every exit sealed. He did not announce that Mia had vanished. If the Morettis accused the Romanos before the ceremony, 12 years of negotiated peace could end before the first vow. Dahlia returned because only she could authenticate the floral work. She hated the relief she felt when Antonio promised the contract would be honored. Part of her had still been measuring a child's fear against rent, wages, and an overdue refrigeration bill. She kept that shame close as they entered the flower room. 4 people had access to the route Mia used. Rafael Romano, Celeste's older brother, had publicly opposed the marriage. Tomas Reed had opened the west gate. Vivian Cole, the wedding coordinator, held keys to the flower room. Marcus controlled the guards, schedules, and internal corridors. Marcus laid out an orderly case. A sign-in sheet showed that Raphael's assistant had collected a floral box. Tomas had left his post. Vivian had moved the spare wrist corsage. Security photographs placed a Romano vehicle beside Dahlia's delivery van. Marcus even offered his own communications for inspection. He remembered details no opportunist should. Mia disliked elevators after storms. She drank apple juice only without the label. Marcus had spent a winter teaching her to tie her shoes. He carried her through fever and childhood grief. Antonio trusted the man who occupied space's grief left empty, making suspicion feel like ingratitude. "Cancel the ceremony," he advised Antonio. "Your daughter comes before an alliance." It sounded loyal. It also gave the saboteur exactly what Mia had overheard. Celeste asked to see the 7 authentic corsages. Vivian unlocked the bridal cabinet. All 7 rested inside, including the spare bearing the Romano crest. Marcus's evidence had just changed meaning. No Romano guest needed to steal a bracelet that had never left the cabinet. The one in Dahlia's box was created from the beginning to be found beside Mia. Then someone copied it from a photograph, Marcus said. Dahlia examined his face. He looked concerned, not cornered. Either he was innocent, or he had spent 20 years learning how Antonio expected innocence to look. Nearby, Marcus straightened a crooked place card without noticing, a small habit of someone accustomed to keeping Antonio's world orderly. Dahlia placed the genuine spare beside the counterfeit. To most eyes, they were twins. To her, they had different histories. The real orchid had absorbed clear preservative through a diagonal cut. Its petals remained cool and firm. The fake orchid was already curling, because its stem had been hacked straight across. The real copper frame was polished. Green sealing wax clung to the fake frame, meaning it came from a crate that had not been opened in Dahlia's workshop. She checked her delivery list. 4 sealed crates had left the shop. Only 3 reached the flower room intact. Marcus's inspection team had opened the 4th at the west gate and transferred its contents into a hotel bin. There were discarded orchid stems, ribbon ends, wire, and 2 practice crests in that crate, Dahlia said. Everything needed to copy this. Marcus did not deny the inspection. He pointed out that caterers, porters, drivers, and Romano staff had all crossed the service yard. Dahlia also smelled bruised eucalyptus from the inspection bin, a scent absent from every arrangement prepared inside the bridal room. One of Dahlia's assistants remembered a man studying the sample corsage that morning. She could not see his face behind an open van door, but she remembered gray fabric and the scent of cedar. Raphael wore gray. His cologne contained cedar. So did the cleaner used on the hotel's old wooden service elevator. The clue widened the suspect list instead of narrowing it. Dahlia found something else. The ivory ribbon on the counterfeit had been wrapped over black uniform cloth while the flower was fresh. Whoever made it had prepared the frame that morning, before Mia overheard the plan. Her disappearance was not an opportunity someone exploited. It was the central piece of an operation arranged in advance. From the doorway, Mia watched Dahlia rebuild the false bracelet layer by layer. He said, "It only had to look real from far away," she murmured. Every adult turned toward her. "Who said that?" Antonio asked. Mia's gaze dropped to the black cloth. "I don't know if you'll believe the answer." Dahlia cleared a low table and brought 6 loose flowers. She gave Mia a white rose for Antonio, a blue orchid for Celeste, a red carnation for Raphael, a cedar sprig for Marcus, a yellow tulip for Tomas, and a small daisy for herself. "No names," Dahlia said. "Just show us where everyone was." Mia placed the daisy behind a folded napkin to represent the service curtain. She moved the tulip toward the west gate. Then she placed the cedar sprig near the corridor, but her hand stopped before setting it down. "I couldn't see his face," she said. "I saw his arm in the mirror. He had a shield button here." She touched her cuff. He smelled like the wooden box in Daddy's office, and he called Daddy Tony. Few men used that name: Raphael, Marcus, and 2 Moretti captains. Mia moved the cedar sprig beside the tulip. "He told the driver it was a drill. He said the gate should stay open for 15 minutes. Then another man was supposed to walk me into the garden and pretend he found me. Why didn't you come to me?" Antonio asked. Mia looked at Celeste. "Because he said if I talked, Daddy would think her family tried to take me. He said the wedding would end, and everyone would know it was because of me." Celeste sat beside her without touching her. "You are not responsible for what adults choose to do." Mia's eyes filled. "That isn't how people talk in our house." Antonio lowered his head. He had taught his daughter that every mistake carried family consequences, every public weakness invited an enemy, and silence kept people alive. Now he expected her to speak freely. He removed his guards from the room and left only one woman chosen jointly by Celeste and Mia. It was a small correction, but Mia noticed. Dahlia returned to the flower map. The shield button could belong to Raphael's coat or Marcus's old security uniform. The cedar scent pointed nowhere certain. Mia had given them truth, but not a convenient accusation. Then she tapped the yellow tulip twice. "The driver was scared," she said. "He kept asking if Mr. Moretti approved." The man told him he had Tony's private seal. Antonio's private seal had been stored in the security office since his hand injury 3 weeks earlier. Marcus was still responsible for protecting it. Tomas Reed was found in the underground garage, sitting behind the wheel of an empty town car. He admitted opening the gate but produced a written order bearing Antonio's seal. Marcus had delivered it as part of a surprise readiness test. Marcus said the paper was forged. Then a porter reported seeing Raphael near the west gate. In Raphael's car, guards found ivory ribbon, a blue orchid petal, and a printed message sent to Celeste weeks earlier. This wedding must not happen. Antonio's anger moved faster than reason. He ordered Raphael detained. Dahlia stared at the ribbon from the car. She had packed hundreds of yards that week. This piece felt stiff and papery, designed for gift boxes. The counterfeit bracelet used soft silk, imported for skin contact. The blue petal was from a dyed dendrobium placed in guest arrangements, not the natural Vanda orchid used in the wrist corsages. "These don't belong together," she said. Marcus replied that Raphael could have discarded the real materials. Then why plant the wrong flower in his own car? Raphael gave them the unflattering truth. He had opposed the marriage because he believed Antonio's world would swallow his sister. The message was real but old. That morning, he had gone to the service gate to meet a lawyer bringing amended protections for Celeste. He concealed the meeting because admitting it would insult Antonio before the vows. Celeste confirmed the documents. She was furious with her brother, but the secret was not an abduction plan. Antonio released him. The reversal embarrassed Antonio in front of both families, and Marcus used that discomfort carefully. Raphael did not thank Dahlia. He admitted he had ignored her warning that morning, that strangers were handling sealed flower crates. Even an innocent man, embarrassed by a vendor's authority, had helped the lie survive. "This is what happens when a vendor interprets fragments as evidence," he said. Dahlia felt every eye turned toward her. For an instant, she wondered if he was right. She was a florist standing among people trained to recognize threats. Then she looked at Mia, who had heard trained men reduce her terror to a security error. "I interpreted flowers," Dahlia said. "You nearly arrested a man over ribbon you never bothered to touch." Marcus's jaw shifted. It was the first real emotion he had shown. While the families argued, Dahlia's assistant called from the market. A man claiming to represent the hotel's insurer had arrived with forms authorizing him to collect the remaining blue orchids, the delivery ledger, and any damaged wedding accessories. He offered cash if the shop closed immediately. Dahlia told her assistant to lock the back room and keep everyone in the public area. Her voice stayed even until the call ended. Then her hands began to shake. Speaking up had brought the danger to employees who had never agreed to enter Antonio's world. "I should take the bracelet and leave," she said. "Let your people finish this." Antonio did not order her to stay. "If you leave, I will still protect your staff." That freedom made the choice harder. Dahlia could return to the shop, save what remained of the wedding contract, and let powerful men decide which facts mattered. Or she could remain and accept that choosing correctly did not guarantee safety. She remembered her mother's first shop, lost after a luxury hotel delayed payment for 6 months. Dahlia had promised never to risk her employees for a wealthy client's crisis. Staying now felt like breaking that promise. Leaving felt like teaching Mia that adults listened only until listening became expensive. Neither choice kept Dahlia innocent or made her fearless. Marcus entered before she answered. He offered to place guards at the market and send the counterfeit to his laboratory. "Did the black backing leave any fibers?" he asked. Silence settled over the room. Dahlia had shown the black cloth only to Antonio, Celeste, and Mia. The others knew there was security fabric, but not that it backed the ribbon or shed fibers. Marcus recovered quickly. "One of the officers must have mentioned it." "Which officer?" Antonio asked. Marcus named a man who had never entered the flower shop. It was not enough for an accusation, but it was enough for Antonio to stop defending coincidence. Dahlia chose to stay. She asked her assistant to photograph every ledger page, move the original off-site, and keep the remaining flower scraps untouched. She did not feel brave. She felt responsible and frightened at the same time. Antonio studied Marcus after he left. "He was beside me when Mia's mother died," he said. "He carried my daughter out of the hospital." "Then don't accuse him because you're afraid," Dahlia replied. "Give him one chance to choose what only the guilty man would choose." Dahlia's trap used no weapon, hidden camera, or child as bait. It used the one thing the saboteur had underestimated. People who arranged flowers understood routes. Antonio separately informed each suspect that Mia would re-enter the ceremony through a different corridor. Raphael was told she would pass the White Rose Gallery. Vivian heard the peony stairway. Tomas received the hydrangea service hall. Marcus alone was told that Dahlia would escort Mia through the blue orchid corridor beside the west gate. In reality, Mia remained upstairs with Celeste and the jointly selected attendant. She helped choose a film and ordered hot chocolate. Antonio let her know a test was underway, but did not make her responsible for its success. Dahlia placed distinct arrangements at each false route. She also left an empty flower box in the west corridor, apparently containing the original counterfeit bracelet. Inside was only copper wire and a note asking whoever opened it why a child had been considered expendable. Before leaving Mia, Dahlia admitted she had almost handed her to Marcus at the shop. She did not excuse herself with the contract or his identification card. Mia asked why she had stopped. "Because you moved away," Dahlia said. "And I finally treated that as an answer." Mia gave her the torn orchid for the trap. The waiting stretched. Wedding musicians tuned in the ballroom while guests pretended nothing was wrong. Dahlia stood behind a service screen with Antonio and Raphael. She could hear her refrigeration unit humming through a telephone connection to the shop, a small ordinary sound from the life she might have damaged beyond repair. Reports came from the other corridors. Raphael remained in the White Rose Gallery. Vivienne paced the peony stairs. Tomas waited beside the hydrangeas with both hands visible. Only the blue orchid route drew someone assigned elsewhere. At last, Tomas's radio crackled. A junior security officer named Pike had entered the blue orchid corridor, carrying a second copied bracelet with the Romano crest. Guards from both families stopped him before he reached the empty box. Pike insisted he was following emergency orders from Marcus. He had been told Mia would appear there, confused and alone. His task was to place the bracelet beside her, announce that he had recovered Antonio's daughter, and report seeing a Romano car leave the gate. Antonio asked when Pike received those instructions. "Before sunrise," the young man answered. "The plan existed before Mia ran, before Raphael visited the gate, and before Dahlia's crates arrived." Marcus had arranged every piece, then adapted when Mia escaped beyond the controlled garden. Pike surrendered his radio and a duplicate of Antonio's seal. He had believed the operation was authorized until Marcus ordered him to retrieve Dahlia's ledger and frighten her staff. Pike repeated the orders before both families, preventing Marcus from rewriting them. Marcus did not wait to be summoned. He entered the corridor with 6 guards, claiming Pike had been compromised by the Romanos. For one dangerous second, Moretti and Romano security faced each other across the orchids. Antonio stepped between them. He did not reach for a weapon. He held up the duplicate seal and ordered every man who still served the family, rather than Marcus, to lower his hands. 5 did. The 6th looked at Marcus, then slowly obeyed. Marcus stood alone beneath flowers he had planned to use as false proof. They moved the confrontation into the flower room, away from Mia and the wedding guests. Antonio placed the counterfeit bracelets side by side. One had been torn from Marcus's first plan. The other had been carried by Pike toward the root. Only Marcus knew. Marcus called Pike weak and Dahlia ambitious. He said Tomas misunderstood a drill. Raphael had motives of his own, and anyone could steal a seal, Dahlia answered without triumph. The genuine Romano corsages had never left the locked cabinet. Both counterfeits used scraps from the inspected crate. Their black backing came from senior security ties. Marcus knew construction details no innocent officer had been told. His route alone drew the man carrying the second bracelet. Antonio added the part flowers could not prove. Financial records showed that every failed peace meeting had expanded Marcus's private security budget. Shell contractors under his control supplied vehicles, guards, and intelligence to both sides through intermediaries. The wedding would dissolve those contracts and place security under joint oversight. Antonio said Marcus had needed him afraid of Raphael Celeste and any peace that might appear to cost him his daughter. Marcus's composure finally slipped. For 20 years, he had guarded a family that seated him with staff at every holiday table, never as an equal partner. He had taken blades meant for Antonio, carried messages through neighborhoods Raphael would not enter, and stayed awake beside Mia's hospital bed while her father negotiated downstairs. See, every danger Marcus prevented made Antonio more powerful, yet the reward was another order and another closed door. Marcus said He had built the walls that kept Antonio alive, only to be ordered to hand their keys to the family that had spent years attacking them relentlessly. His grievance was real. So was the choice he made with it. For one moment, Antonio looked less betrayed than deeply ashamed. Marcus admitted he planned a disappearance, not an abduction. Mia would have been watched from the garden. Pike would recover her within 15 minutes. The Romano bracelet and departing car would force Antonio to cancel the wedding, without Marcus openly opposing him. Once the alliance collapsed, Antonio would need the only security chief who had appeared competent. What Marcus had not predicted was Mia hearing the rehearsal, taking the first bracelet, and leaving the controlled route. His men lost sight of her. Rather than confess, he widened the lie, sent someone to Dahlia's shop, and prepared Raphael's arrest. Antonio looked at the man who had protected him through half his life. You decided her fear was harmless because it served you. Marcus had no answer that did not make the truth smaller. He surrendered his access ring. Antonio ordered a joint Moretti-Romano inquiry into the stolen funds and the men Marcus had used. No one struck him. No one threatened what would happen after the door closed. He was escorted away under the authority of both families whose peace he had tried to prevent. Antonio found Mia in the bridal suite, sitting between Celeste and the untouched hot chocolate. He removed his jacket, dismissed the remaining guards, and sat on the carpet several feet from her. The bracelet box rested between them, but he did not open it. He did not list the evidence or ask her to repeat her story. He simply waited. Mia watched his empty hands. Then she climbed down from the sofa and placed the torn blue orchid in his palm. I didn't run away from you, Daddy, she said. I ran because no one in your house believed me. Antonio closed his fingers around the flower. He nodded once, unable to repair the sentence with a better one. When Mia moved closer, he held her. His silence was not an absence this time. It was room for her fear to exist without being questioned. The wedding did not resume that night. Antonio and Celeste postponed it for one day, replaced Marcus's unit with a temporary team chosen by both families, and gave Mia the names of every adult she could approach without permission. Celeste sat beside her at breakfast. I will never replace your mother, she said. I only want the chance to become someone you choose to trust. Mia did not call her mom. She slid the sugar bowl across the table, an invitation small enough to be honest. Antonio offered Dahlia a reward. She refused charity and requested something harder: full payment for her staff, repairs to her shop, and a fair hotel contract bearing the correct business name. Antonio signed Dahlia Brooks' floral studio without shortening a word. Dahlia returned to the market before sunset. One window was cracked, several buckets were overturned, and her assistants looked exhausted. They cleaned together. Nobody called her fearless. One employee handed her a broom. The next afternoon, Dahlia made Mia a new bracelet from one blue orchid. It held no crest, hidden fabric, or alliance colors. Mia chose the ribbon herself. When the ceremony began, she walked between Antonio and Celeste, holding one hand from each. A guest asked who had made the bracelet. Antonio turned toward the woman standing beside the flowers. Dahlia Brooks, he said. The woman who listened when the rest of us were too powerful to hear. Dahlia met Mia's eyes. Mia lifted her wrist, and the single blue orchid trembled as the three of them continued down the aisle.